Hey, what's going on, friends? How you doing? Andy Abramson, just jumping on here for a couple minutes, hanging out in the office with my dog Bo, who is definitely chilling, which is really fun. Hey, just wanted to jump on for a minute or two here and just kind of share some thoughts and things that I've been kind of just wrestling through, teaching on, helping people. One of the things. In fact, I was in Jonesboro, Arkansas, this last weekend, and ended up having a few minutes with the staff, the college ministry staff and interns. And I talked about this idea with them of how to evaluate when we get stuck. And part of that was kind of a personal thing for me. I feel like that over the last several weeks, there's been just kind of some like gaps in my productivity, my engagement, some of the things that I've been trying to focus in on. And so I took an opportunity just to kind of step back and evaluate. And I was walking through with them, like when we get stuck, and we always at some point are going to get stuck in our lives, of like evaluating kind of three key things, right? And in some ways, it's kind of like you got to trace these things up the river to determine which one of these things are the issue of why we're stuck. And so the first one is really, which is kind of the furthest one up the river, is really this idea of identity, right? Of really beginning to identify, do I know really two things, whose I am and who I am, right? So this idea of whose I am is understanding of just how God sees me, understanding who I am in Christ, understanding that I'm beloved. Like all of those things are an important part of us moving forward, but not only whose we are, but who we are. And there's kind of three things I talked through with them. It's understanding our stories, right? Of how God has woven together our stories to bring us to where we're at, understanding our giftedness, as well as understanding the best context in which we are called to minister in. And so I think one of the things where why a lot of people get stuck is if you trace it all the way up to the top, is it can be a brokenness in our identity. And that can be things like believing lies. It can be things like just kind of like reworking some of those thought patterns maybe in that are broken in us, right? So, but then you go down a little bit further from that is if your identity is clear of whose you are and who you are, the next thing is really around this idea of destination. And this is really kind of like a vision piece of like, okay, I'm clear who I am, whose I am. I'm clear in really the identity piece, but now am I clear in the direction piece, right? Am I clear in terms of like where I'm going? And there's five kind of key questions that I ran through in this with them, thinking about what am I called to do? Why am I called to do it? How am I going to do it? When am I successful and where am I going? So those are the five that we walk through in that of just saying, am I clear in terms of vision of where I'm going and my direction? Because for some of us, we can have be clear in our identity, but not clear on our direction, right? We cannot be clear in terms of where God ultimately is calling us to go. So that's the second piece. The third piece is sometimes our um, identity is on or clear. Sometimes our direction is locked in, but the execution is the third piece, right? And so, and there's really kind of like four rhythms that we really encourage when you think about like execution. You think about like the quarterly planning as part of execution. We talk about weekly reflecting. We talk about daily allocation of energy and then pulling away periodically to assess and creating those rhythms of execution. And so I think sometimes what we can do is if we're not careful, like we can look at the execution piece and say, well, that's I just need to like read another book on productivity, or I need to like, you know, be more finish my to-do list, which can be the case if your identity and your direction are clear. But if they're not, in a lot of ways, the issue is not execution, right? You got to trace that back up and say, okay, if I'm not executing, and I feel like I'm stuck a little bit. Is it an execution issue? Okay. Now, but could it be a direction issue? Like the reason I'm not executing could be because I'm not clear on my direction. Like, and so I have to-do lists and things that I'm doing, but I'm not actually like moving where I want to ultimately move. And then you got to trace it up one more step and say, okay, am I clear on my identity? And so I've been thinking a lot about that. In fact, we're going to do a training here. We have a group of leaders that have some productivity course that we put out for different college and ministry leaders, and I'm actually going to do this training with them and kind of stick and kind of dissect each of those three areas in kind of deeper ways. But I would encourage you, if you're stuck, trace it up the river. Okay, is there brokenness in your execution? Okay, if there is, maybe it's an execution issue, or it also could be a direction issue. Okay, is there brokenness in your direction? Okay, if it is, that could be the issue, or it could actually could be an identity issue. And so you gotta go far enough up the stream to make sure that you identify correctly, really what those issues are. So hopefully that was helpful for y'all. I've been thinking a bunch about that, even in my own life. I was sharing it with these college ministry leaders in Arkansas. I'm going to be sharing it with some of the people that we're connected to. Wanted to put that out there just for everybody else today. So hope you have a great day. Hopefully that was helpful. Okay, we'll talk to you later. See ya.